have found Procrastinate, a podcast for people who put things off. I am comedian and writer Athena Kugblenu, and I'm also a professional procrastinator. We're going to talk to some interesting people about the work they do when they are not doing the actual work they're supposed to do, and all the stuff in between. I have a feeling I'm going to get some tips on how to handle the fallout of my procrastination, whilst also learning how to feel slightly better about myself too. And we have got a tremendous guest for you today. Enjoy. Welcome to Procrastinate, musician, podcaster, activist, consultant, Linton Stephens.
Hiya, you're right.
I'm good. What did I miss out? I thought I did my research.
You didn't miss out anything. They're all there. I don't care what you call me. I've been called a lot worse.
Well, you called yourself a procrastinator. So I said to you via Facebook Messenger, would you like to come on my podcast about procrastination? And you said, I paraphrase, yeah, I'm a procrastinator. And I thought, what? How is a professional musician a procrastinator? I would never have guessed.
Athena, I am the king of procrastination. Like, I'm not even joking. Coming on this podcast is procrastination from actually doing any other work that I've got to do.
Okay, so I'm asking every guest, what should you be doing whilst you do this podcast with me today?
I've got scripting to be done. It's not urgent, but like I'd set aside my weekdays this week and next week to write my scripts for when I'm back on Radio 3. And I just always find something else that needs to be done. It's like, oh look, there's a bit of washing up there, or
wow.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you as a young person discovering the bassoon and thinking, I need to learn this instrument. I love it, because you started off on the oboe.
That's
and
right.
Then you saw a bassoon and thought, I want that in my life.
God,
that's
you have done
amazing.
your research, haven't
you? Well, I pride myself on procrastinating. I was procrastinating whilst doing research. That's what I was doing. But that to me strikes me as a kind of a can-do, go-getter, very kind of a driven person, right? So were you always a procrastinator, and did you have those habits as you were learning your instruments?
Do you know, when we're playing an instrument, I say you can't really procrastinate, but you absolutely can. I think the thing was, I was the type of kid, so I'm like one of seven.
Seven?
The six brothers and sisters. Yeah, the six brothers and sisters. And it was kind of the situation where if you want something, you really kind of have to sort it out yourself, because Dad was working away as a lorry driver. Mum had like 6 other kids to keep her eyes on, and the youngest is 12. There's 12 years between the oldest and youngest. So for all the time that I was at primary school and even the first bit of secondary school, we had a very young child in the house. So Mum's attention was always elsewhere. And it was the kind of thing where if you didn't go and do it yourself, Mum wouldn't have time to do all the research for you and that kind of thing. And so, and for me, it was a case of like seeing a bassoon in a book and thinking, I just want to play that. I don't know what it was. And actually, as it happens, the opportunity to play the bassoon didn't come up until I was about 16 and a half, when a mate of mine who was at the grammar school, she said, oh, the music teacher's come in today and asked if anybody wants to play the bassoon. And everybody said no. And I was like, oh, well, if there's a space, I'll do it. And it just so happened to be my old oboe teacher from when I was like 8. And and I just kind of took to it like a duck to water, so to speak, and lots of things came out from that. But the thing about practicing, especially when I was a kid, is it was a way to get away from being in a house full of people. So I used to go into sixth form college like at 7 o'clock in the morning and practice for an hour and a half before going to class, and then I'd stay at the end of the day. It was just, but it was also for me, it's a bit of time. It's quite meditative. The thing is, the procrastination comes in when something changes from a hobby to a job. Then there are times when it can be a bit of a chore, but I certainly procrastinate about practicing now. Like there'll be times. It's funny because you have a really I've just witted on for ages. Sorry, Athena.
No, this is exactly what we want in a podcast. Wittering on. This is perfect.
It's funny because most people that you speak to will have a really weird. I think it's. I don't want to patronize anybody listening, but it's quite a weird thing when you're a professional musician, the relationship you have to your instrument, because you're at such a high functioning level of doing what you do, that the smallest dip can really, really, really effing annoy you. So, and then there are times when I just think, I just don't want to, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to touch it. You know, it's just something I don't want to do at the moment. So I will literally find anything to do sometimes instead of playing my instrument. And then in terms of the broadcasting stuff, writing scripts, some people love, I've got a really good friend he writes jokes, comedy for TV personalities, and he absolutely loves sitting down and writing. I just don't have the attention span for it. Like, my attention span, and that's completely different to playing the bassoon and illustrating. I can sit down and draw and practice for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and time just goes like that. But with writing, like, my mental focus is, I have to do it in short, intense bursts. So it'll be like 40 minutes, and then I need 20 minutes away, and then 20 minutes, and then I'll need 20 minutes away. I will literally do anything to like not sit down and do it.
But do you need a deadline? Could you write without a deadline?
I do definitely need a deadline with writing, for sure. The problem is I will leave it until I am... Actually, no, that's not true. That is not true. I definitely need a deadline. But what I will do is very consciously use the time that I have before the deadline to spread out. So I might leave it until... So my next stint on the radio is in a fortnight's time, a week on Monday. And I've got 5 scripts to write. And they're hefty scripts. It's 3 hours long, each script. And each script probably takes me about 4 hours to write, I think. And so what I've done purposefully is left 5 days next week and the rest of today after I've done this. Whether or not I'll get to it, I don't know. But the rest of today, and like spaced it out, so I'll get one done today. And if I don't get it completely finished, I'm like, that's okay. I've got wiggle room because I've got one. I can get one done each day next week.
What's the most ridiculous thing you've done to procrastinate? I'll start off by answering the question myself. The other day, I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I went through their sock drawers and I organised their socks, and because kids lose socks, so I took out all the socks that were
it's not just socks. Kids, honestly.
And I took it and I threw away the socks with holes, and I matched up the ones that weren't matched up, and I got rid of the socks that were too small, and then I saw my daughter had some holes in her tights, so I sewed up the holes in her tights, and after about 2 hours, I was like, those are really tidy sock drawers.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. When we talk about procrastination, and I might get a little bit political with you at some point on this.
Athena, please do.
I've been thinking about this. But when we've been when you think about procrastination, like the thing you've just described, whilst you were procrastinating from one thing, you were absolutely busying yourself with another job that needs to be done but isn't urgent. And actually, I kind of think that's not so bad. I have this thing, it's usually on January 31st, maybe the 30th, when the tax is due. I call it procrastination, when suddenly I have such an urge to practice my bassoon and not do my taxes. And actually procrastination is anything when I'm practicing my bassoon to avoid doing something else. But I think, well, I'm still being productive. But now I'm going to get political with you because I was thinking about this a lot, and this idea of procrastination. And I think we give ourselves such a hard time about procrastination because we live in a capitalist society that tells you that you have to be busy to be of value, to be contributing something. You have to be busy. Now, there's a difference between wanting to spend your time, I think, doing something, being busy and being productive that brings you and your, personal life value. And I'll tell you why this was a big thing for me. In my 20s, when I first left music college, I wasn't working as much as I wanted to. So I had quite a few free days, and there would always be, and especially as a musician as well, there's always be this guilt that like I could be doing more practice, or I should be doing something. I should be being productive. But I was speaking to another bassoonist actually, and she was talking about intentional rest, and that was something that like took me my whole 20s to get into my head. Even if I don't have much on, I need to schedule time for intentional rest because I think we live in this society that tells us we need to be busy to be of value. We need to be productive to be of value. And I don't think that's always the case. And I've completely digressed from your question, which was what was the most stupid thing I've done. Probably answering that question the way I have.
But that's lovely. I genuinely started this podcast to make myself feel better. It was an indulgent thing, because I think most of us do feel a sense of guilt when we are doing either nothing or something unrelated to the job that we have, especially if, in my case, like, oh, there were things that haven't worked out professionally and I need to be doing more to push it forward, or projects haven't finished. So it's not like there aren't things waiting for me to be done. And that sense of guilt can send you into a spiral that makes you less productive, because your brain energy is spent on being unkind to yourself and just getting on with it. And I think intentional rest is really interesting. So I recently in relation to the age of the universe, I guess, but I embrace napping. I'm a sleepy person.
I love a nap.
I have to accept that some people wake up at 6 and they drink some kombucha or whatever, and they go for a run. And some people like me wake up because they're obliged to, because the law says you've got to feed your children. That's
because you've got to keep other humans alive.
If I didn't have to take these kids to a formal establishment of education every day, then I would happily stay. Like 8 o'clock is, I say, I'm very much a sleepy person. I like to be like. My partner cusses me out for this all the time. Like, I have no problem going to bed at 10. Like, no problem at all with this. And even if I'm awake reading my book or doing my Duolingo, like, I just sort of think, why would anyone not be in bed at 10? This is like, I can watch the news in bed, I can watch Newsnight, and then I can just kind of go to sleep. So I'm a sleepy, but that's just my energy. That's me as a human. And there's nothing I can do about that. I stopping myself from napping. I was like, fuck this, I'm just going to go to bed. I'm a freelancer, the kids are at the house, I've done my work, and half hour, 45 minutes sometimes, and I'm really happy that I made that decision to embrace the nap. What kind of things do you do to intentionally rest? Is it napping? Is it like
oh my god, like I literally tell everybody I'm 38 now. I think I've been tired since about the age of 21. like consistently tired since the age of 21. So a nap is like a big part of my day. I literally sometimes find it so hard to function if I can't nap. But I never go to bed. I literally, like my other half, Matt, always says that you could sleep on a washing line, because I will literally sit on the couch and my body will just nap for 20 minutes max, and then it'll wake me up. And then I'm good to go then. Once I've got that tiredness out of me, I'm good to go for the rest of the day. And that idea of going to bed, I'm an early riser. Like I wake up with the sun. So in the winter I'll wake up later, but in the summer, like at the moment, I'm waking up about 5 or 6 o'clock. And I'll go, like, it gets to about 9 o'clock, and then I'm clock watching for when I can get into bed then. Like that is my, oh my God, I'm ready to go to bed. And I just want to come back to something that you say. You talk about something that I just don't think gets enough credit, like how the flipping heck people have a job and are parents as well. So like, even you talked very flippantly about your responsibility to your children. You are not that you were talking flippantly about your kids, but you're keeping 2 humans alive. That is a big flipping job in itself. Such a big job. Like, I would literally probably be in a grave in about 2 years' time if I had like kids under 10. Honest to God, I just don't know. Like, a dog is enough, but I just don't know how people handle it. So like this, and I don't know where we've got to in a society where being a parent is devalued because you're at home. Like, it is harder job than most of the actual occupations that are out there. So like, Jesus, I couldn't do it myself. So procrastinating to actually do things to keep other humans alive is work in itself, I think. And if you're doing that alongside a job, well, like, all props to you, because I have problems staying awake just with one job.
Well, I'll tell you something, like, children give you a whole wealth of opportunities to procrastinate that you never. So the sock drawer would be one thing, but
that is not procrastination to me. That is a job that needs doing.
It needs doing. Yeah, like,
and if it doesn't come out of that time, it comes out of your own personal time, and then you hate doing that job. But like, the thing is, when you procrastinate and do a job like that, you do it with so much fervor and like commitment, because you're trying to avoid the other thing that needs doing, that you do this one with such to such a good job.
Nothing motivates me more more than a tidy child's wardrobe or chest of drawers, because it doesn't matter how well or how organized it is, within about 30 minutes of them being home, everything's everywhere again. So I don't even know how they got to that shelf. It's even taller than you.
They haven't even been upstairs yet.
What, is there ever sometimes I think, has there been a hurricane in my house? Like, what are you doing? When I find myself wandering down the lane of wanting more professionally, or wondering why I'm not doing more, I do think, oh, it's because someone just shat in my hand today. Like, this is not something that a lot of people have to deal with. But just on your point where you said you couldn't do it, you'd be surprised. There's a switch in your brain, man. It's like the universe's time is like elastic, and the time you don't think you have, you suddenly have it when it like I said, the law says it's necessary. Like, it's literally, you will get arrested if you don't. So on that level, don't forget about the love and the unconditional love and support you have for them. People will knock on your door in this country if you don't.
You literally don't have a choice.
Yeah. So it's amazing, and I think like the trick is to not overthink it. I talk to people who talk, I want kids, or they want more kids, so they got one. And like, how'd you do it? And it's like, you don't really plan to do it. You get, it's in front of you, and then you figure it out. It's like the crystal maze. You
adjust when it happens.
Yeah, you open a door, and then you think, right, I'm going to dodge this obstacle or whatever. But you don't know what's behind the door, so you can't possibly understand how you're going to do it. On being productive, it's important to be kind to yourself, but is there genuinely something you really want to do, creatively or personally, that is like, it's on my to-do list, and I keep crossing it out and putting it on the next page, crossing it out and putting it, where you're like, this is definitely something I want to do though. Procrastination, I embrace it, I love it, but there's this one thing that I just want to get on with.
Athena, that list is like far too long. Like, there are so many personal projects that I think, I need to crack on with that. And my other problem, like, this is like a therapy session now, Athena.
Oh, amazing.
I'm bearing myself. My other problem is I can start a project with loads of enthusiasm, and I get about halfway and it just like peters out. It just flatlines. And then I find it really hard to take a project further to completion. One of my personal projects was to create an illustrated book of Black British history. And I did so much work for it. And then I got halfway and I was like, nah, can't be bothered. I'll use it for something in the future. A couple of times, actually, personal projects I've really seen through. So I did last year and this year a social media thing on my own social media about Black classical musicians. And in March I did women composers. And so just like each day I would post an illustration that I'd done myself of, in October, Black musicians, and in March, women composers, and with a bit of information, and I got to the end of that, and I tell you, I was just so glad. I didn't feel any joy that I'd seen this month out and completed the whole project. I was just like, thank fuck I don't have to do that anymore. That was the feeling. It's like that feeling of getting your taxes done and paying your bill. The payoff is like, oh, well, I've done it. I hated it, and now I'm X amount of money down. That's what I felt when I finished those projects. However, the feedback that came back from those projects from various people was very positive, so that was a nice thing about it. But yeah, when I got to the end of those projects, I was just like, oh my god, this is such a pain in the arse, and I don't know why right now I'm planning the next project for October as well. But yeah, I guess if because that was an educational thing for myself, but for other people, that was more the thing that spurred me on than when it's entirely for myself.
See, now, in my unprofessional opinion, I'm gonna pull that apart for you. Okay, I think when we do things out of love, we also sometimes do things out of necessity. And I think you are clearly a political person, and you are well aware of your status as a classical musician in the world that we live in. And you're like, well, actually, I have all this knowledge and it's really interesting. And I constantly am reminded every day about how how few people have the same knowledge or how difficult it is to get it, because how hard was it for you to get it? So it's like, let me do the hard work, so in the future it's not going to be as hard for other people. And then once you understand the value of that, it's very hard to like not do it, because you know the value of it, because it's almost like having money and going, well, I've got money and I've got to spend it now, right? You can't sit on it. You've got to spend it, otherwise it's worthless. But you also know that it's like, well, wouldn't it just be easier if it was just out there, like everything? I feel so silly saying this. My daughter's. We've got a piano. There's a piano, so I'm teaching my daughter piano. I'm like grade 3, so this is but she's 5 years old, so I can kind of get her going. But I have all my old piano books from when I was a kid, and all the musicians are just like white European. It's all the classical kind of easy to play stuff, Beethoven, and Mozart and Brahms, and these are all really good because she would have heard these songs before and they're familiar to her. And so when she plays them, she's like, oh, she kind of recognizes it from an advert or whatever. Oh, you know, it's a Champions League theme or whatever. Like she's gonna get. But at the same time, from this age now, she is learning a view of the world that isn't real. It's not real that all classical musicians are right. It's not real that they're all European, right? And she's 5. So now I'm thinking, well, Linton did this amazing wall chart of women musicians. This is amazing. She can see that, and you have this playlist on Spotify to go with the things you did for Black History Month. So it's like she has that now. So even though it was a chore for you, it corrects something that isn't right, and you know that, and that is where your desire to do it comes from, even though you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, is it October? Oh shit, I've got to do another wall chart, right? But you know the value of it, so that's what I think.
Yeah, no, that and that's exactly it. Like, that was what I was saying. Like, even when I got to the end of it, I was like, I'm just glad not to be doing it anymore. But what's been really nice is for people to be like, right, I can use it for this, and can I get a copy of that? And it's not even that what I did was particularly hard work. It's just very often it's just collecting that information and putting it in one place is what people don't do. And so if you do that for them, it just makes life so much easier for somebody because they have that to access now.
But it's also a burden, I think.
It is a burden.
Yeah, years ago, I stopped doing that. I stopped doing so many things when I got knocked up because all these things changed in my life that made things difficult. But when I lived alone and had like a flat to myself, I used to make videos, right? And one day, and it would have been like the 31st of September. Also, I was like, every day I'm going to make a video for Black History Month about a book that isn't like Martin Luther King or Trevor McDonald. It's going to be like something, it's going to just slightly expand on a narrative. So rather than repeating the same stuff, I've got a bookcase full of really interesting material, and just, so we can kind of move on from this. Black history is like a black famous person who reads the news. Not that isn't wonderful, but it is more to get more of like to make it a bit more well-rounded.
A fuller picture of what history really was like.
And a little less tokenistic or whatever. So I did that. And then it went really well. It was fine. And then I did more of it, right? And I was like, this is really needed. This is actually really good, because every October since, it's been the same narrative, same story, same people. And it's like, how do we not know this yet? Like, how is this? And I said to myself, so I could easily make 30 more videos about 30 more stories, about 30 more things from like across the spectrum, like history, sports, culture, music, film, whatever. And I just have never got around to doing it again. But I know the value of it. Like, I know how important.
But the thing is, I'm going to ask you 2 questions now, right? The first one is, if I get somebody else, and this is why sometimes I like working with other people. I don't mind putting in the work, and I'm a real ideas person, but sometimes I just need 1 or 2 or a couple of other people in a group to just help me with. So I'm planning a festival next year. I've been planning it for about 3 years and not done anything about it. And all of a sudden, like, the agency that I'm working with, they're picking up these bits, they're doing the ideas for this, they're doing the, and I'm basically I am doing some work, but I'm basically doing curation. Like, I need that assistance to just keep me, keep that rocket going. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, because I find this really all the time, is the less I have to do, the more I procrastinate. And I was wondering if that's the same for you. Like, yes. If I have less on, then I find it so much harder to be productive. Whereas if I have like a few things that I really need to bam, 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 get done, I will use my time so productively.
Yeah, massively. So I can get a lot done in a day if I have to get a lot done, and if I don't have to get a lot done, it's just a punch up of a script. I could do that I could do that just before I pick up the kids, and then I'll find other things to do. That is, oh god, so many jaws. So yeah, massively. So a full schedule. So any promoters, bookers out there, fill up my schedule, please.
You get more work out of me.
Yeah, shout out to my manager for keeping me busy. So actually, recently I've had the most incredible week because I've had it's just been so full of work, and I'm so lucky because today was the first day this week where my tasks are not as plentiful. Absolutely true. The more I've got to do, the easier it is for me to open my laptop, sit down, and bash away.
Yeah. Because you'll be like, I've only got an hour to get something here, so I need to use this hour economically. I need to use it effectively.
You give me an inch of time, I will take the fucking biscuit. I'll take them. I'll just I'll water the plants. I'll iron bed sheets.
Clean the windows. Yeah. Wash the curtains.
Or something one day I had this. Someone gave me a French manicure kit, and I don't know if you've ever tried a French manicure. That you can't do it yourself; it's impossible. But I will attempt. And I know I can't do it. I'm not deft enough with my hand. That's actually why I started this podcast as well, because I was like, I thought about this podcast such a long time ago, and I was like, oh. And then what I did was I sent a message to my manager and I said, guess what? I'm going to do a podcast. And she was like, that's great. And now I was like, now I've got to do it.
Well, that's it. But that's why if I put it out publicly, then that is that was the same with my Blacktober and Women's History Month things. Was if I put it out publicly, then that is me committing. Yeah. That's me committing to other people. Whereas if I just promise myself, it's I don't care if I don't do it because I haven't promised anybody that I'm going to do it. But if you put it out publicly, which is why I made announcements about it. I've interrupted you, sorry, but if I made announcements about it on my social media, and I was like, well, I've kind of really got to do this now.
Do you have a good memory?
Right, my boyfriend would tell you that I don't have a good memory, but I think I've got a pretty decent memory, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to say you don't have a good memory then. Because no, when our partners think we don't have a good memory, we don't have a good memory. That's just that.
Well,
there's a certain
the thing is, thing. I don't. I'm gonna challenge that. I think because I don't have for Matt. I don't have a good memory when it suits him.
Oh, okay.
Whereas, there are things that I will completely forget, which are not trivial but a bit stupid. But actually, I'd say things that So, if somebody tells me their name in a social situation, forget it. I'll a couple of minutes later, I've completely forgotten it. But things there was a time last year for about 6 months where I just didn't use my diary, and honestly, I knew when I had things on, and it was stupid because I don't know why I didn't. I was just so averse to writing stuff down, but I always knew in my head, I could visualize in my head how my week looked. And even if I didn't know, I'd be like, "There's something on Friday, and I need to check what that is."
Okay, so you do have a good memory then. I take that back. I took the side of someone I never met before. But the reason I'm also doing anecdotal research because my memory is notoriously it's shit. People can tell me life changing stuff, and I'd be like, "How are you?" They'd be like, "Athena, I just told you some really bad news last week," and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, your dog did die." It's so embarrassing. I hugged the wrong people because I can't remember their faces. Do you know what it's like to hug the wrong person? It's so humiliating. I forget or I will work with someone and do some really meaningful work with them. But then if I haven't seen them for a few weeks after that, or not seen them on social media or heard from them, might struggle.
No, I'm the same. I'm exactly the same. And the worst thing as well is when you do stuff like we do, where you're meeting new people all the time. And the other thing as well is, I think when you're in the public eye. I wouldn't say I'm in the public eye. I'm on radio, but people get familiar with you and then think you know who they are. So I've had people come up to me and be like, "Oh, it's Jessica from social media." I'm like. Hi Jessica. So my new thing now is if I bring Matt along with me, and if I don't know who they are but they clearly know who I am, I'm like, "This is my partner Matt," and then I let them introduce themselves. And then I wait 5 minutes till they walk away and I go, "I have no fucking idea who that was." But I have a weird memory. Some things, Matt will be like, oh we did that together, and I'll be like, "Did we? When?" specific things won't stick in my mind, or even music I've played. Somebody will say, "Oh, have you played?" And when you play a piece of music, you commit it so much to, like, physically and mentally to your body. So once I'm hearing it again, I'm like, that sounds familiar. But if somebody says the title of it, I'm like, I've never played that piece in my life. Don't know what it's like.
Yeah, your connection to it isn't the title; it's the actual.
Yeah. It's the physicality of it.
Yeah, the actual thing. That's so fascinating. So yeah, I'm doing anecdotal research about memory and procrastination. I don't know if there's a link, because the other thing that I don't talk about this too much on the podcast, but being a procrastinator is linked to ADHD. But I think so many people procrastinate. It's just another aspect of our human, the way we deal with work. And what you said earlier about capitalism is so true. If we're not doing something that has an immediate monetary benefit or doesn't take us towards that, like if it's not study or whatever, we categorize it in a way that might be negative, but actually it might be good for us. Like, for example, the work that you do to promote black musicians or women musicians, it has value. It's so important. It doesn't matter that someone's not paying you to do it. And it doesn't matter that it's not like, there's not an invoice you can send to someone because you've done it. It's still important. And you know what? Socks should be organized. Like they should absolutely be organized. They should be paired up. They should have they should be thrown away if they're too worn. They should be anyway, whatever. I need to stop talking about socks. We're going to wrap this up. I'm going to wrap this up because you told me earlier that you've got stuff to do after this. So I don't want to be.
I'm not in any rush. I've got the whole afternoon. Well, I'm not coming back. So.
No, you don't. You got to get this done. Okay.
I've got a whole week now. Do you know what's going to happen? I'm going to nap straight after this. Actually,
well, a nap is obviously necessary. You have given so much advice just in this conversation. The word procrastination is just genius. You're practicing. It's practicing. It's practical. It's not procrastination. It's using that time to do something else. If you're not going to do something, you'll do something else that's just as beneficial. Do you have any other tips that you can give me on either feeling better about my procrastination or getting stuff done that I can put into my little procrastination Bible that I'm not going to make, but...
Yeah, the thing that I've learned, like the biggest thing for me in my 20s was just to be okay with intentional rest. And actually, I did a class at the Guildhall the other week, and I was speaking to the bassoons there, and it was really actually nice to see, because I was like, how many of you put intentional rest into your diary? And there were 5 bassoonists there, or 6 bassoonists, 5 said they intentionally rest. And I think the generation below our generation is so much more aware of how important having time to just do nothing. I'm not saying you have to do nothing in that time. Like, some people don't like sitting still. They like to fill their time with something, even if it is like a work thing, practice or but I think it's really important to put intentional rest into your diary and prioritize it the same way that you prioritize work, because like the idea of a job and an occupation are things that we get fulfillment out of, but they're human constructs, and so rest is as an important, being awake but resting and having time to reflect and meditate and all of those kinds of things. I say that I don't really do much meditation or anything like that. I wish I did do more. I'd say don't view procrastination, especially if you do other jobs in that time, as a bad thing. Yeah, you've got to get this thing done. But I guess as long as you're hitting your deadlines, then that is just the way you vibe. Like, that's the way you work. That's the way you do it.
This is me.
And for me as well, the balance of, can I procrastinate now? Like, can I dick about for half an hour? And that balanced with, will productivity now bring me some kind of satisfaction? Like yesterday afternoon, I went to the pub and I wrote my script all afternoon, and that brought me satisfaction. And as I said, doing this podcast, like, it is slight procrastination, but at the same time I was like, that'll get me out of the house, that'll get me out in the sunshine, I'll be traveling somewhere new, I'll see something new. That is like, I'm procrastinating from doing a script which isn't urgent, but it's also I'm doing something productive which will bring me, for so many other reasons, some kind of enjoyment and growth, even if it's just seeing a place that I've never seen before.
That sentence is this productivity going to bring me satisfaction? I'm taking that away. What a fantastic bit of wisdom to end this podcast on. Linton,
I'm copywriting that.
get on a t-shirt. That's the one. It's wonderful. I'm going to take that away from this, and that alone makes this not procrastination, but actually a very useful way to have spent the last 45 minutes.
Well, listen, thank you for having me on. It's been so nice to see you again.
Yes.
Full stop, but also to have this chat.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. Thanks, Athena.
Procrastination, intentional rest. Will this productivity bring me satisfaction? If you didn't adore Linton Stephens before this podcast, I hope you do now. All the handles and links you need to keep up with Linton and his work and activism are in the description of this podcast. Again, many thanks to him and even more thanks to you for listening. You can like and follow on all the usual podcast platforms and subscribe to be notified of new episode drops. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.